Hello and welcome. My name is Brian, and this is going to be like a podcast style. I'm going to try to leave the editing at basically at minimum, and just want to talk about how the campaign is going, and um, thoughts and insights that I have about how the last episode went. Um, and if you haven't watched it, definitely do, because this is basically just all the behind the scenes, my thoughts, spoilers, whatever. And it's been very interesting running a module for Star Wars, as this is a 2001 um, living campaign, hence the living force, um, which I thought was really interesting because it kind of took into this aspect of like a West Marches game, which in this last week, well, really ever since Critical Role announced what they're doing with their season 4, the term West Marches has been filling my ear holes with every single YouTube video that I've been watching. Right, so this living campaign I think was fairly close to this, where they had a lot of people, a lot of different tables, all playing the same story at the same time. So a little bit different than West Marches, because in the West Marches campaigns, there's some interaction or some cause and effect that comes from the other different tables, with the one large group broken down into several smaller ones. This was a, hey, every week we have a fun new little adventure for y'all to play, and we're gonna play it together, and this is what we came up with. That's kind of this turned into. So we're basically playing the game, what, it's 25, so we're playing this game 24 years later. Oh man, okay. It's kind of hitting a little bit. We're playing this almost a quarter of a century later, and it's interesting to say the least. So I believe that, well, I know that the Living Force campaign came out right around that same time as the revised core rulebook, which I have right here. That came out, the Living Force campaign came out in 2001 is when that started, and it went on for several years. This, if I remember correctly, was it 2002? D20 system, yes, 2002 Lucasfilm. So they literally had just the core rulebook, and then they eventually went to the revised, and then I think at the end they went to the Saga. No, I don't think the Saga edition came out by the time that they got done with all this. So they were using the revised core rulebook, and so a lot of the stuff that gets mentioned, like for example, minor spoiler, they end up getting a all temperature cloak in the last session that we played. They end up getting a two all temperature weather cloaks, and I was like, what is that? They got it in the revised core rulebook, and I got behind me, so I was like, oh, that's what that does. Anyway, so they had tons of people playing this game at the same time, and I say tons, I mean like there was maybe like, I did a little bit of research, there's like less than 100 individual people playing at the same time. It'll obviously ebb and flow, but they would meet up every week or every month or whatever, and they would all, these different tables, they would play the game at the same time, and they'd be doing the same story. They had handouts, they had like the people who were facilitating the event, like, dressed up. They had voting that happened at one point. At least from where I'm at, right where we're at right now in the story, there's like like as a whole, as the whole event, there was like a vote done, and it ended in a tie. Like the people that were actually playing the game voted, and it ended in a tie, and now it's in the module where it like was a real life thing happened that made it a canon event in this story. Now, granted, I say canon event, but like the Living Force campaign is considered legacy at this point. It's no longer like a Disney canon kind of thing, but it's headcanon to me, man. Okay. Not going on that tangent. Not today. We don't got enough time for that. Not today. Maybe future video. But there's already been literally hundreds of videos of people ranting about it. So we're not going to rant about it as much as I want to. But, so we're playing this, right? So there was a certain expectation in 2001 when they were playing this, that each chapter, now in this chapter there's 7 encounters, and the last one is a combat encounter. So they expected for tables to get through each chapter in 4 hours. I don't know how that's possible in 2025. It's not possible in 2025. So it's like, man, my players really like the talkie bits that there is in this one chapter. It does touch on the 3 main pillars of TTRPG, D&D, whatever. The social, there's the combat, and then there's also exploration. So they currently just got done with their first social, technically, and now it's a bit of exploration. But in the exploration, they're also talking to people. Let's see here, and then there's a combat, and then there's a second combat at the end, right? Yes, there's 2 combats in this. Yeah, there's 2 combats in this. Technically 3, but there's two combats in this, and the pace at which my table goes is insanely slow in comparison to trying to run this entire chapter. Trying to run each chapter in 4 hours, that's insane. And we would be literally in the cantina. We would be in the cantina, and the first interaction that they would have to have in order to keep the session actually like moving along would have to be the man bursting through the door. That would have to be we couldn't do any other role play. We really couldn't. The guy would have to be running past the players as they're walking into the cantina. They'd have to like run past them and run into the cantina to keep the pacing of whatever the module thinks that we could do in 4 hours. And so I think it's insane. But I guess they did it. Now, granted, back in 2001, right, there were, like, I think it was D&D 3.5. I think it was around that time. Now, one thing I do know that was around that time was Baldur's Gate 1 and 2 that used the Advanced Dungeons & Dragons. Baldur's Gate 1 came out in 98, and I think 2 came out in 2000. Maybe it was 99. I think it was 2000. But those games came out around that time, and they were really popular. And then you come to 2001, the early 2000s. So there's just a different style of TTRPG expectation, because the revised core rulebook in that era is literally D&D 3.5 reflavored as Star Wars. So it's that type of game, and the way that they were playing it back then, I think they could have done I think they could have done it in 4 hours. It wasn't, where we had, fourth edition for a little bit, and then we have fifth edition. Fifth edition is like, especially once Critical Role really started popping off, that people were like, oh, this thing can be a story, not just a dungeon crawl or a death march where they go to point A to point B, probably die along the way. But no, there's a narrative, there's story, there's character backstory, and there's narrative elements sprinkled all throughout. In fact, it's not sprinkled, it's slathered like a bunch of mayo on a sandwich. Just thick. Most of this, most of Dungeons and Dragons is now story. And then look at Daggerheart. That thing is all narrative. Look at Star Wars FFG role-playing game. That's all narrative. There's like, it's literally called narrative dice. And so there's so much story now. And there's still combat. Oh yeah, there's definitely still combat. But there's so much more emphasis on the narrative and the story. And that's what my players really grasp onto. They really like the social or the talkie bits, as what Luke from the DM layer likes to call them. They really like the role play, the social interactions. And those take a long time. They take a really long time. And it's really fun to interact with the Star Wars universe in that way. And it does tend to, at points, kind of bog down. Now, granted, we are almost at the end of the third chapter. I think we're in the middle of the third chapter currently in our session. Like, as of today, when I'm recording this, we're in the middle of the third chapter, and just the amount of time spent interacting with the different NPCs and just the world around them takes a lot of time. And we typically have like 4-hour long sessions. And by that logic, we should be already like, oh my gosh, we should be 4 stories deep into this, if that's what the expectation was. Each story has got like 3 chapters to it. Each chapter has got like 6 to 7 encounters, all varying in size. But we should already be, by what the 2001 people thought, we should already be 4 stories deep. Would be insane. Like, no. Not my table. They like to talk. And I like to talk as well. As much as an introvert as I am, I'm not talking when my NPCs are talking. That's them. That's the NPCs being extroverted. Not me, no. So, to actually talk about episode 1 now, it was kind of difficult to plant the seeds along the way. I don't like to think of it as railroading. It's more like leaving breadcrumbs along the path, or M&Ms, trying to get your kid to go into their crib or whatever. You put little M&Ms every so many feet, and then you just kind of slowly lead them. They're like, aha, I got you where I wanted you. That's kind of what I had to do with episode 1, or really the last 3 episodes. Maybe much more prevalent in episode 0 and 0.5, where I was like, okay, all right, I've got this story that I've got this, this module that I want to explore and to run, and there's this whole story that I want to play. So, here's the breadcrumbs to lead you to the cantina where a new threat happens. And so that was fairly difficult, but it needed to make sense for my players from a narrative standpoint. because, like I've been talking about for the last 15 minutes, they really like the social interaction. They like things to make sense. And that's something that I've definitely had to grow and to try to, like, I have to think about when I think about one thing in this module, I have to look at it in at least 3 different ways. And I'll tell you what, that's a lot of prep, man. That's a lot of prep. And I can't just fly by the seat of my pants, because there's a couple of times where in the last, however many sessions we've been doing, there is a little bit of the improv, and I'm just like, I don't know what this NPC is gonna do. I don't know what they would say. What's their motivation? I'm like, okay, their motivation is XYZ. Okay, all right. This is, why do they want to live, right? Why do they want to continue existing in this galaxy? And so these things need to make sense. And so it takes a long time to prep and to get the social encounters right. I'll just sum that up and just say right, or get them to an adequate level of preparedness. So when encounter 1 happens with a new threat, it was interesting because the module has got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. It's got 6 different social encounters in the opening encounter, like 6 different social interactions that the party can have. And so in the session, they talk to the bartender, they talk to the Rhodians playing Sabak, and then they talk to the Tara Sin, that is the band. And so the module says run to 2, but there are more. And I was like, well, talking to the bartender, that's a requirement, right? You walk into a canteen, you walk into the bar, you gotta talk to the bartender, right? So that one doesn't count, right? But the sabak table, which one of my players is like proficient, that's like one of the things that he took. Now I was like, all right, cool. So there's a sabak table, which actually lined up pretty nice. And then the other one was the Tara Sin, which I really wanted to have that interaction as well, where that's like the new species to, well, there's technically a couple of different new species to the module, but the Tara Sin are like the most, at least to me, the most interesting. And so I really wanted to have that interaction as well. And so in the module, it just has the band. How well do they play? And then like what does it say here? They're just happy to be working from their vantage point on the stage. Any celebration is good celebration. They've actually been playing all day, so they don't know anything about the cartel's announcement. They don't know anything about what just happened outside, and it's like, it doesn't have anything about, at least here in this, it doesn't mention anything about them and how the Tara Sin feel about the current political climate on the planet. Now, granted, back in 2001, that wasn't really a popular thing to talk about, and wasn't probably a thing mentioned at many tables. But at my table, or my party chat, that is a thing that came up. So they're like, what's going on with the cartel? What's up with this? What's up with that? And it's like, there's no guidelines to this module as to how do the Tara Sin react to being questioned, and what is their general demeanor. And does it even say how many there are? No, it just says that there are some musicians. There's some musicians, a musician group. And so it's like, okay, all right, and just have one of them talk, one of them speak for the group. And so Um, it is really, really interesting because I got to come up with a lot of stuff on my own. But that's also, I think, part of the reason why I like the modules is that it gives a good framework. It gives a solid framework. It's like, like it gives the skeletal structure and it gives the muscles. Now I got to give it the skin and the face and the characteristics, basically. Um, I gotta flesh out the story that they've made, and sometimes the tiny details make all the difference, and can really spin something. I like it can really change how an entire interaction is handled, really, and that's kind of the hard part about following a module as well. You just kind of use it as a guideline, and you have your key points that you want to touch on. So this one was a new threat, which was basically while they're talking to the Tarasin, there's a man that bursts through the door and says Kularn is in danger. He's out of breath. He's been running, and then a bunch of guards are right behind him and arrest him for some kind of espionage, industrial espionage. And the players want to fight the guards. And I'm like, you guys just landed on this planet like half an hour ago, like in universe half an hour ago, and you already want to kill a bunch of guards. It's like, okay, all right. I think it's Aurora that tries to like fling their chakram at them. But luckily, Sylvaris is there, the cool, calm, collected one, and keeps Aurora from attacking. Because we wouldn't want to have Encounter 1 be a TPK, where it says there's like a dozen guards that walk through. Now, granted, this module is like your players meet in a cantina. That's level 1 type stuff. Like, that's level 1. You don't have abilities. You can't deal enough damage when a dozen or more guards come bursting through the door. Now I think at that point they were level 2, maybe level 3, but I think they were level 2. And it would have been interesting to have a TPK. And while also missing a party member, they were down a party member because we had, I forget when we had exactly started, but Ryan, who plays Lucian, he wasn't able to join us like right away, but he was going to join us later that night. And so then literally at the end of episode 1, he shows up. That's where I wanted to end the episode. There's a little bit of a funny moment there at the end. But the module was like, there's a bunch of guards that burst through the door. It should be clear, not that they should fight. It should be clear. And it says, let me see here. Heroes are welcome to convince the guards not to take the young man, but will not succeed. And then the guards will tell them if you got any questions, stop by House Hirskala, which took me a while to figure out how to say correctly, but now I'm fairly confident with it because I've said it 100 times. Let me see here. There's enough guards that they will be able to get the young man out the door and away in a speeder before the party can stop them. If the party insists the remaining guards accompany them to the house, the guards will refuse. Make it clear. Where was it? Yeah, they produced a document. This is the other thing too, which was it took me a minute to figure out as well. And my players, it's taken. I don't know if they figured it out at this point either, even though we're several sessions deep into this. the if you're running this module, a word of advice: try to take it very clear, because there's some stuff that I think is just assumed that the players know with this arrest and like how things work on the planet. So there's one thing that you get out of this video. It's this. When there is an arrest, when there is an arrest made, right? The security guards that are affiliated with the different trading houses and just the different businesses in the town. The way that it works on Kularn is that the business can basically take custody of the thief. We'll just use thief. They can take them, question them, but then they have to bring them to the police station, basically. Like the way that it is expected on the planet is that first you interrogate them and then you bring them to the police station. Private security forces, it is also very much the case that in Gadron, private security forces bear equal weight with local law enforcement, and in fact more weight when matters of industrial security are involved. The heroes are welcome to convince the guards to not take them, but will not succeed. So basically, if a company's been wronged, they can take the thief, interrogate them, but then they hand them over to the police station to actually do any kind of legal prosecution. The players are definitely under the impression that they're going to torture and kill this man in horrific ways beyond what I can mention here on YouTube or that I want to mention in my personal life. I don't want to talk about those things. They think that they're gonna cut his fingers off one by one, I think there's like there's like a scene in Gotham, the TV series Gotham, where they got there's like different mafias. Don Maroni, where it's a pretty dark show, I'll say that, with some lighter elements. I mean, there are like kids in the show, so it's like, there's like kid actors, so it's a little bit friendlier, but the dark side of it is really dark. Anyway, that's what they think is going to happen to this guy. They think this dude's a goner. He's dead for sure. He ain't coming out of that. So, the way that it works is that the companies, basically the guards and the local law enforcement, are on equal footing, where they're like, we're going to take him in. But at the end of the day, they need to have, for an arrest, legal documentation. Like, they need to have, like, he's got to have a warrant out for his arrest. So, and that's what the guards produce, is a document for the legal arrest of this man that just burst through the cantina. Yeah. Right. And then it's got the module does have some contingencies. So if the players didn't want to go to House Hirskala after seeing that the paperwork was produced from House Hirskala. The module does have a contingency in its opening encounter where someone will stop in the cantina and be like, "Did a bunch of men run through here wearing a uniform like this?" That kind of thing, and they will bring the players in for questioning back at House Hirskala. And so the way that it works on Kularin with the law enforcement is basically the different like how does it word it again? The guards, or private security forces and law enforcement are considered to be on equal footing. So this would be the equivalent of the police and a hired guard posted outside of a like a bouncer at a bar. A bouncer at a bar and the local law enforcement on Kularin are basically bear equal weight in terms of the law and like security, that kind of deal. So when they haul the young man away, it's like the police hauling them away. And that's just how it works. Now, once they're done interrogating him, they have to turn them over to the police, and that's where they have their warrant. They have their documentation for the arrest. So if they have the documentation for the arrest and they capture them, they have to bring them to the police. Otherwise, that's very illegal. So it's a little confusing, and in minor spoilers for upcoming episode, but it's not going to be for a while. A similar situation happens again, where there's a different trading house who has private security. There's another instance of theft, basically, and the players end up basically stopping the thief from running away. And there's a little bit of a standoff where it's like, we captured him, he's ours. And it's like, yeah, but there's like literally 20 other guards around you. And they have stopped. They've stopped you. So you don't have a foot to stand on. And now you've basically just taken a hostage as opposed to arresting him. That's the difference there. It's not very well explained. In fact, let me actually go to it, because it's not explained very well. Okay. So this will be minor spoilers for episode 3, apparently. Says she does have first claim on the man since he was caught stealing from her. The private security concerns do supersede the OPS, or the Office of Peace and Security, the police. In cases like this, he will eventually be turned over to OPS, but only after Rena's security team, such as they are, have had a chance to make sure that he can't provide more definite information. Private security in Gadron and Hedret. Private security in Gadron and Hedret as well have the right to non-lethally interrogate any prisoner who is caught committing a crime against them, but must remand the prisoner to OPS for punishment. So they can capture and interrogate, but for any kind of punishment, it has got to be done by the law enforcement. And so that was one thing that was like really hard to get across to the across the table, because the players were like, oh, you're gonna take him and you're gonna basically torture him to the brink of death, and then bring him back, and then kill him, and then bring him back again to get any kind of information out of him. And it's like, well, no, like, people don't do that. Mafias and horrible people do that, but not just like, you or me, right? We don't do that. Like, if I had a business and someone was stealing from me, I'd stop them and then be like, all right, what did you steal from me? And then be like, hand it over. And then if he does or doesn't, then bring him to the police and be like, hey, this guy stole from me, I got it back, or I didn't get it back, whatever. That's how it was like supposed to be handled. But the players were very adamant on that. He was just going to be tortured to the point of death, of the most gruesome variety to get information out of him. And it's like, no, because if there was like someone spilled a gallon of milk at the superstore, broke it, it's wasted, whatever, and then they didn't pay for it because they broke it, you break it, you buy it, kind of deal, technically then stealing it, damaging merchandise, and the local security inside of Walmart like went over and started cutting off their fingers one knuckle at a time to get information out of them as to why they did that. I wouldn't go to Walmart. I wouldn't go there and be like, what happens if I like bump into a can of tomato soup and it falls and it dents the can? Am I gonna lose my pinky? Like, well, I wouldn't go there. I wouldn't go to that place. I'd be like, nah, man, I'm gonna lose the pinky if I slip. If I do something that was not my fault, or something so minor or whatever. That's kind of like what this is. And maybe that's how I should describe it. I'm like realizing this in real time with this. It would be the equivalent of like a security guard in a Walmart or in a Publix that's like keeping you from shoplifting, basically, or like keeping you from like running out with a $7,000 refrigerator or however much they cost these days. And it's like, yeah, we gotta bring you in for questioning. Like, what the heck are you doing? Or like the airport, right? There's airport security and then there's the police. Okay, the airport security, if you are bringing in a bomb on the plane, the airport security is gonna stop you first before the police get involved. Now, the police may be inside the airport, but you're gonna get stopped by the airport security first. Like, you have no right to arrest me. You're not the police. They don't care. They're the security force. They're gonna stop you, and then the police are gonna walk in here, and then they're just gonna, you get your handcuffed and being held by the airport security. It's just gonna turn into you're handcuffed and you're being held by the police officer. It doesn't make any difference. You're in handcuffs now, and maybe that's how I need to explain that to my players. Is like it's like the security in an airport, where they hire people to stop the bad people, and then the police come in and actually serve justice. That they could stop you or whatever. But okay. Anyway, so side rant apart. Maybe next session we'll talk about more about the actual session. But I am going to end it there. Thank you for joining me on my rant. Apparently, that's what I'm doing now. Leave a like, comment down below on this video, on episode 1, or wherever, your thoughts on how it went. If this is something that was interesting to you, if I'm just joining you on your commute to work, whatever, any kind of interaction is of course much appreciated. And I'm going to stop rambling now. May the force be with you. Goodbye.